And yet over and over, Jesus clearly distinguished himself from God, saying, the Father is greater than I, serve only the Father, worship only the Father has sent me. He makes it very clear that he is not God.
It sounds like you're not familiar with what Christians actually believe. Monarchical Trinitarians distinguish between the Father and the Son in role, not in essence. Dr. Richard Bauckham notes that the earliest Jewish Christians had to make this semantic distinction to avoid two heretical misunderstandings: modalism, Father and Son are the same person, and ditheism, two separate gods. In the New Testament, God, theos, when paired with Jesus, in the same context, typically refers to the Father, but that doesn't deny Jesus' divinity. John 10:30. I and the Father are one, uses henesmen, not his esmen. The Jews understood this as a claim to equality with God, hence the charge of blasphemy. And Thomas's confession in John 20:28, my Lord and my God, is accepted by Jesus, not corrected. That is critical evidence of self-understanding and early Christian recognition of his deity.
The reason that Christianity doesn't actually make sense is because it's not a religion that's created around the teachings of Jesus. It's a religion that was created with a specific narrative in mind, and then they just reshaped Jesus's teachings to fit that narrative.
Historical evidence says otherwise. Before the Gospels were even written, we have the Q source, circa AD 40s, containing sayings where Jesus applies Daniel 7's Son of Man to himself, a title unique to Yahweh in Jewish monotheism. 1 Corinthians 15:3-7, an oral creed dated to circa a D35, affirming a crucified, buried, and risen Jesus. Multiple independent early sources, Mark, Q, John, Paul, consistently portray high Christology. There is no first-century evidence for a different message that was later overwritten. If you claim so, produce an earlier contradictory record. Spoiler, there is none.
Let's not forget that Jesus had a powerful movement that was not afraid to be killed, to be persecuted, and this was a huge threat to Rome. So what they did is they got in front of the movement and created a religion that would still serve them in the end. How they did that is by deifying Jesus and making him seem like he's equal to God.
This is historically false. Christianity became legally recognized only in AD 313, Edict of Milan. Long before that, Christians were persecuted precisely for calling Jesus Kyrios, Lord, a title also claimed by emperors. Roman historian Suetonius notes disturbances in Rome at the instigation of Chrestus. Pliny the Younger records that Christians sang hymns to Christ as to a god. The early confession, Jesus is Lord, was a direct theological challenge to Caesar, not an invention of Caesar.
And yet over and over, Jesus clearly distinguished himself from God, saying, the Father is greater than I, serve only the Father, worship only the Father has sent me. He makes it very clear that he is not God. He says, I and the Father are one, but that is not the same as being equal to God.
John 10:30's immediate context shows the Jews accusing Jesus of blasphemy because you, being a man, make yourself God. The Greek syntax, henesmen, refers to unity of essence. Ignoring the audience's reaction is ignoring the inspired narrator's commentary.
And yet 300 years later, Rome and a bunch of early church fathers create a creed and put Jesus up in the Holy Trinity.
The evidence contradicts you. Justin Martyr calls Jesus God. Council of Nicaea didn't make Jesus God. It settled the Arian controversy. Was the Son eternal or created? The bishops appealed to Scripture, not to imperial decree,
which separated us from him, because now we can never be like him, which is what they want. Because if they had millions of Christed people walking around having the same effect that Jesus did, then their entire system would collapse. And so what they did was they created this separation, and again, not based on Jesus' teachings. They then reshaped it and gave you other interpretations of those teachings to just help you have some peace of mind. But if you read just Jesus directly, it is very clear that he never said that he was God.
Let's read them. Lord of the Sabbath, Mark 2:28. Old Testament title for Yahweh. Glorify me, with the glory I had with you before the world existed. John 17:5. Son of Man, coming with the clouds. Mark 14:62. Direct allusion to Daniel 7, where the figure shares divine worship with the Ancient of Days. Authority to forgive sins. Mark 2:5-7. Prerogative of God alone. And note, Jesus does not say this authority was delegated.
I wonder, where did Christianity go so wrong? Because truly, like, Jesus's teachings were so beautiful. Loving your neighbor, compassion, forgiveness, good works, the kingdom being within you, God being this loving father, all of this beauty. And yet the version we have today is fixated on blood and sacrifice and atonement and sin. And honestly, all this pagan ritual sounding bullshit that I don't get it.
This misrepresents Christian atonement. In the Old Testament, Yahweh himself initiates sacrifice, Leviticus 17:11. Isaiah 53's arm of the Lord suffers for the sins of many. Christianity sees this fulfilled in God himself taking flesh, John 1:14, and bearing sin. This is divine self-giving love, not pagan appeasement. As Hurtado notes, earliest Christian worship was shaped by gratitude for the divine self-offering.
Went wrong. And then I remember, oh yeah, Paul is where it went wrong. You have no idea how many Christians I have heard say, well, you can't have Jesus without Paul, and you guys are absolutely insane. Like, this is probably the false prophet that he warned about that would come in his name and distort the teachings. You guys think it's, coming now. It's like, no, he was speaking to his disciples in that time period. Paul started teaching his gospel.
To prove corruption, you must present an earlier contradictory message from the 30 to 40 AD period. You haven't. Paul's letters, AD 48 to 65, align with independent gospel traditions, not override them. The earliest heresies, late 1st century, early 2nd, already assume high Christology, meaning the original movement worshipped Jesus as God.
Paul's teachings that go back to, I think, 50 AD, or even maybe 30 AD, I don't know. And then you can see how his theology seeped into the canonical gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they are from around 60 AD. And you see all the similarities. It's not meant to be read in the order that it is, because Paul heavily influenced what was included in the Bible. Because again, Christianity wanted one unified, theology, doctrine, and text to live by, and that wasn't what was going on. There was many Christianities in those first 100 years after Jesus died. And again, just pointing out that before he came along to distort everything, there was a version of Christianity out there that had nothing to do with his view.
The blame Paul approach is an anachronistic Islamic reading back with no primary source evidence.